Welcome to a Revelation of Jesus. This 70-video series covers the whole book of Revelation. To access the other videos in the series, I've included a link in the description to the full Revelation of Jesus playlist. In the previous 3 videos, we have looked briefly at some of the Bible tools that can help us understand Revelation. In this video, we will look at the Revelation Chiasm, one of the most powerful tools found within the very structure of Revelation itself. Many readers have noticed that words or phrases that appear at the beginning of Revelation also appear at the end. For example, the first verse of chapter 1 says, "Show his servants things which must shortly take place." The last chapter has the same phrase, "Show his servants the things which must shortly take place." This phrase is found nowhere else in the book of Revelation. And there are several other words, phrases, themes, or symbols that are found in both the first and the last chapters of Revelation. This is the first clue that Revelation was written with a chiastic structure. A literary chiasm is a mirror image pattern. It uses a progression of words, phrases, symbols, or ideas in the first half that are mirrored by the same or similar elements in the second half, which build from both ends towards the climax in the middle. Chiasms are often found in the Old Testament and other ancient literature. A chiastic structure looks like this. A1 is a word, phrase, symbol, or theme that appears at the beginning. It also appears at the end, A2. As you read a little further, you encounter another element, B1, and it also appears as B2 somewhere before the end. This pattern continues up to the middle of the text, where we reach the climax that is the central theme of the narrative. Often there is a single climax with one word or phrase, but in Revelation there is a double climax with 2 distinct but related elements. Sometimes you will see the chiasm turned aside like this. Here's a Bible example. The story of Noah and the ark, found in the book of Genesis, was written with a chiastic structure. Notice that key words form a mirror image. Ark is A1 at the beginning. Ark is also A2 at the end. All living creatures come second. All living creatures appear second to the last. Food is third from the beginning, and food is third from the end, and so on. The mirror image pairs built up to G, the climax. God remembers Noah. The climax is a turning point in the narrative. Before the climax, the animals entered the ark and the waters increased. After God remembered Noah, the waters decreased and the animals exited the ark. The chiastic structure was used to help storytellers remember the order and key points of the story. The chiastic structure also helped to build up to and emphasize the climax of the narrative. The book of Revelation is constructed with the most extensive and amazing chiasm in the Bible, and the complex details make it clear that John did not dream it up. God himself inspired John with the scenes he saw and the words he heard so that he could write them down in a way that created the chiasm. Revelation can be divided into 8 sections, as well as a prologue and an epilogue. These sections are like chapters in a book, and naturally divide into 2 mirror image halves. The obvious question is, how can we know where each of the 8 divisions begin? It is actually obvious because each section starts with a sanctuary scene, such as the 7 lampstands, the altar of incense, and God on his throne. We'll have a lot more to say about this in the next video, which compares the Old Testament sanctuary system with the heavenly sanctuary that is described in the books of Hebrews and Revelation. I became aware of the concept of a chiastic structure in Revelation many years ago. At first, it seemed unconvincing and irrelevant. The main problem was the way it was laid out, with divisions and interpretations that didn't make sense. But with deeper study, I found that when the divisions are correctly identified, the chiastic structure is not only obvious, but it is one of the most powerful tools for analyzing the book of Revelation. We already touched on the prologue and the epilogue, which introduce Revelation and then give some final thoughts. There are several matching elements, some of which are found nowhere else in Revelation or in the rest of the Bible. Each of the division pairs have a matching theme. The first and eighth divisions compare and contrast the church on earth in chapters 2 and 3 with the church in the eternal kingdom of God in chapters 21 and 22. There are also several matching elements in these two sections. Nowhere else in Revelation do we see the tree of life. The New Jerusalem is not mentioned anywhere else in the Bible. In these two sections we see the promise given to those who overcome. It's remarkable how much these two sections have in common, even though one is looking at history and the other at the future. The second and seventh divisions focus on the judgment, both the judgment that takes place in heaven before the second coming of Christ that we touched on in video 1, and the final judgment that will take place after the millennium. In both divisions, John sees heaven opened and God sitting on his throne. He sees a great multitude of people, including those who have been martyrs, waiting for God to judge and avenge their blood. Several phrases, including the white horse and death and Hades, are found only in these two sections. You may want to pause the video to look carefully at the impressive number of matching elements. The third and sixth divisions cover the 7 trumpet plagues and the 7 last plagues. Although these are distinct events, their descriptions use many of the same words and images, such as the earth, the sea, the rivers and springs, darkness, the beast out of the bottomless pit, a great earthquake, and people who do not repent. The great river Euphrates, which flowed through ancient Babylon, is found nowhere else in Revelation except these two sections. The fourth and fifth divisions are the climax of the chiasm. Chapters 12 and 13 present the culmination of Satan's efforts to defeat God's followers with the image and mark of the beast. Then chapter 14 presents the assurance of God's complete victory over Satan and evil, as Jesus, the Lamb of God, and his faithful followers stand before the throne of God, and then deliver the final presentation of the gospel to the world. The image of the beast is prominent in both sections. Those who dwell on the earth in Revelation 13 worship the image to the beast, and in Revelation 14 those who dwell on the earth are warned not to worship the image, but instead to worship the Creator of heaven and earth. The followers of Satan who accept the mark of the beast on their forehead are contrasted with the followers of Jesus who have the seal of God on their foreheads. In these two sections, and nowhere else in Revelation, there is a focus on the patience and faith of the saints. The chiastic structure in the book of Revelation is an impressive literary accomplishment, but it also provides crucial information as we seek to interpret the meaning of Revelation. For example, there are 8 divisions, an even number. This means that instead of one climax, as we saw in the chiasm of Noah, there are 2 climaxes, one for the first half and another for the second half. This tells us that Revelation has 2 distinct but related themes. If we look at the 2 climaxes, we can determine the theme of each half of Revelation. We already mentioned that the first climax, chapters 12 and 13, highlight Satan's final efforts to defeat the followers of God with the beast from the sea, the beast from the earth, the image to the beast, and the mark and number of the beast. We would expect, then, that the overall theme of the first half is Satan's attempts to coerce and defeat God's followers. And this is what we see, starting with the messages to the 7 churches, which clearly show the struggles and failures of the church throughout her nearly 2,000 years of history. This is not so much a criticism of the church, but a recognition that she has an evil opponent, Satan, who is diabolically determined to defeat Jesus by causing his body, the church, to fail. When we study the 7 seals, we will see that many people who have claimed to be believers have allowed Satan to be in control. In the 7 trumpets, Satan marshals his demonic forces from the bottomless pit to impose death and destruction. And in the final division of the first half, Satan, that serpent of old, is unmasked in chapter 12 as the invisible power behind the persecutions of the past, and chapter 13 reveals that he is the mastermind of the final crisis, where his earthly agents launch a desperate attack on God's faithful followers. The second climax, in chapter 14, is an overview of God's victory over Satan. It begins with a picture of the faithful followers of Jesus in heaven with him. This is followed by a dramatic view of those faithful witnesses, symbolized by 3 angels, proclaiming the gospel and warning the world to come out of Babylon. Finally, chapter 4 ends with 2 harvests. The destruction of the wicked in the final crisis is compared to the harvesting of grapes, and the gathering of the righteous at the second coming is compared to the harvest of wheat. The details of God's complete victory over evil then unfolds in the second half of Revelation. In Division 6, the 7 last plagues obstruct Satan's followers and completely unravel his Babylon edifice. Satan's last-gasp efforts to use the Battle of Armageddon to defeat God's followers is totally overthrown by Jesus' rescue mission at his second coming. In Division 7, the 1,000-year millennium and the final judgment give redeemed humanity a chance to look into the book of life and see that God has been righteous and merciful in his dealings with sin and sinners. And in Division 8, we read the amazing description of the new heaven and earth that God will recreate when every tear will be wiped away and there will be no more death, nor sorrow, nor crying, nor pain. We can conclude that the chiastic structure reveals the overarching theme of Revelation, the cosmic controversy between good and evil, God and Satan, with a guarantee of the complete victory of righteousness and love. Besides helping us understand the theme of Revelation, the chiastic structure allows comparisons of the corresponding mirror image divisions. This can help us to confirm the interpretations that are suggested by other tools. For example, in the first Revelation of Jesus video, we compared symbols from the 7 seals with their Old Testament links to show that the 7 seals have to do with the judgment of humanity. This interpretation is supported when we compare Division 2, the 7 seals, with Division 7, its chiastic mirror image. In Division 7, we see Christ coming on a white horse to destroy his enemies who have been persecuting his followers. We then see God's faithful followers reigning and judging for the 1,000-year millennium. And finally, we see resurrected humanity standing before the great white throne with the book of life being opened. The whole division of 7 is about judgment, and this confirms that the corresponding 7 seals in Division 2 must also be about judgment. Here's another example of how the chiasm helps us. We saw in Video 3 that the first 3 apocalyptic visions of Daniel are highly symbolic, but the last one in Daniel 10 through 12 uses literal language. This suggests that we can also expect some parts of Revelation to be symbolic and other parts to be literal. But how can we know which is which? The chiastic structure can help us. Consider, for example, the third chiastic division, the 7 trumpet plagues in Revelation chapters 8 and 9. The interpretations of these plagues are so diverse that you would think that the commentators were reading different texts. A lot of the variation is because there is no consensus as to whether they are literal or symbolic. The trumpet plagues start with hail and fire mingled with blood, falling on the earth and burning up the grass and trees. Is this symbolic hail, blood, fire, trees, and grass, or literal? Then a great mountain burning with fire is thrown into the sea, and the sea becomes blood. A great star called wormwood falls from heaven, poisoning the water. Hordes of evil locusts emerge from the bottomless pit and attack people who are not protected by the seal of God. Finally, an army of 200 million horsemen riding horses that look like lions and have fire coming out of their mouths kill a third of mankind. Did John see symbolic pictures of social or religious development in his time or in the future? Or was he given a vision of literal future events that he tried to describe with the best comparisons he could think of? It helps to compare this section with its chiastic counterpart, Division 6 in chapter 16. There we see the 7 last plagues, which seem to be quite literal. In the first plague, foul and loathsome sores came upon the people who had the mark of the beast and those who worshipped his image. They gnawed their tongues because of the pain and blasphemed God because of their pains and their sores. There's nothing about these sores that seems symbolic. And the rest of the plagues, with polluted water, a burning hot sun, and oppressive darkness, all seem like real events that will take place during the Great Tribulation. This comparison suggests that the trumpets are also literal descriptions of future events. They were totally unfamiliar, so John tried to compare them with things he knew about from his experience, such as burning mountains, locusts, and horses. We need to keep in mind that the chiastic structure is only one of several tools to help us understand Revelation. We will need to confirm the interpretations that are suggested by the chiasm with other evidence. There are also some other potential pitfalls. If the chiasm is not set up correctly, the climax and the divisions will be in the wrong place, and this can distort our interpretation. I will include a link in the description to an article that analyzes this problem. The point is that the chiastic structure is a powerful tool, but we need to make sure that we use it correctly. Another, more serious pitfall is getting obsessed with the literary features of Revelation, like the symbols and the chiasm, and forgetting that the book of Revelation is a revelation of Jesus Christ. What can the Revelation chiasm reveal to us about Jesus? First of all, the chiasm and the other tools that he has provided make it clear that Jesus wants us to understand what he has done, is doing, and will do. This is not just to help us know what is going to happen in the future, but so that we can understand and appreciate the complexity and perfection of his plans. We can trust him to be Lord over every aspect of our lives. We also learn from the chiasm that Jesus brings order out of what appears to be chaos. Many people read Revelation and come away confused, wondering what all the symbols and cryptic language mean. But when we uncover the secrets of Revelation with the chiasm and the other tools that Jesus has provided, we see that order and meaning were right there in plain sight, waiting to be discovered. And this helps us believe that Jesus will bring order and meaning into the confusion and chaos that sometimes takes over our lives too. Most importantly, the chiasm teaches us that at the overwhelming climax of the book of Revelation, Jesus is there to save us. The first half concludes with the image of the beast. As many as would not worship the image of the beast would be killed. No one may buy or sell except the one who has the mark or the name of the beast. This is scary. But suddenly everything changes. John looks up, and behold, the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his name and the name of his Father written on their foreheads. At the darkest hour, when the followers of Jesus are facing an existential threat, we see that the Lamb who was slain is alive and well, and is keeping his promise that he will never leave us or forsake us. By faith we will stand with him on Mount Zion, singing a new song before the throne, even as the chaos of the final crisis swirls around us. Even now, as we see the world around us seeming to fall apart, when evil and ungodly powers appear to prosper, when the future looks bleak and hopeless, the Revelation chiasm teaches us that by faith and with Jesus, we can come boldly to the throne of grace and find grace to help in our time of need. If you have been blessed by this video, please share it with someone you think might be interested, or post a link to your social media. You can find many more details about the chiastic structure and the rest of the book of Revelation in the book A Revelation of Jesus by David Lackey. It is available from Amazon, or you can read it for free at revelationofjesus.net.